Am I the asshole home from 4 days away and asked by my wife to feed our 12-week-old? So my question is, I got back from my 4-day swing away from home for work and arrived home this morning after night shift and a 3 hours drive home. I walked in with my esky that had all my meals and my empty containers and my lunchbox in my arms. My wife, whom I was very much looking forward to seeing, has gone to hand me the bottle for our 12-week-old son and said, "Here you are home. You can feed him," to which I responded, "Can I just have 5 minutes to get my stuff all in the house?" She is now shitty at me and I'm left wondering, am I the asshole? Dude, even though you were working 4 days away, I'm assuming that you got breaks to eat, and break after your shift or work day ended. Maybe some adult-level conversation. Your wife with a 12-week-old, got none of that. She was essentially on the clock the entire time you were gone, as I'm assuming your kid at that age was up requiring feeding every 2-3 hours. So, while asking for 5 whole minutes is reasonable, she clearly felt unsupported while you were gone and was ready for you to step in and help. A bit you are the asshole, yeah. Softly though. But the newborn's needs come first. You feed the baby, then you put your stuff away. You feed the baby, then you might get to go pee. You feed the baby, then you can hug and tell people you missed them. Don't try to grump about that delay on the person who's had to get up every 2-3 hours without help the last week to do every feeding. Looks like I'll have to cop being the asshole. I did not mean to be like that at all, and clearly she needed me more than I needed to put the stuff in my arms away. Noted, and in future I'll have to make sure I'm thinking more about her. You are the asshole without doubt. Have some empathy for your wife who is caring for a 12-week-old. You've had a couple of days' work. She's been at it 24/7. I'm sure your wife would trade 3 hours of driving for 3 hours of feeding, changing, and cleaning your son. You are the asshole. You are the asshole. If you wanted time to yourself, you shouldn't have had kids. Likely your wife needed 5 minutes to herself as well. Likely she has not gotten that because you have been at work. Feed your kid. Am I the asshole for telling my brother he's wasting his life and needs to get it together? So my younger brother, 19M, moved in with me, 22F, a few months ago after dropping out of college. He spends all day gaming and scrolling through social media while I'm busting my ass at work. I come home to a messy apartment and him still in his pajamas. I've tried talking to him about maybe getting a job or doing something productive, but he always says he's taking a break, or figuring things out. Yesterday, I came home after a 10-hour shift to find the sink overflowing with dirty dishes, trash everywhere, and him yelling at his game because he lost a match. I asked if he could at least help keep the place clean, and he snapped that it's not a big deal. That's when I kind of lost it. I told him he's wasting his life, that time's flying by, and he's gonna regret it if he doesn't start doing something now. I might have said he's being a freeloading bum and needs to grow up. He got super defensive and said I'm being harsh and don't understand what he's going through. Now things are awkward at home, and I'm wondering if I was too hard on him. Am I the asshole for pushing him like that? Edit. I spoke with my brother, and he told me it frustrated him because he feels like he's not able to accomplish anything, and it's really affected his self-esteem, which is why he's always staying inside. I also showed him that Cloudburst.it calculator someone mentioned, and he was pretty shocked seeing the long-term numbers laid out in front of him. It seems like he does want to change for the better but has been feeling overwhelmed lately. Thanks for the genuine comments offering suggestions. Not the asshole. Time for you to set some boundaries. You need to give him a time limit on getting a job, and a rule about house cleaning. If he is not working after 30 days, or does not clean up after himself daily, he will receive an eviction notice. It's time he started acting like a young adult. He can find himself while being responsible, and maybe working a generic job will prompt him to go back to school or find a trade skill he can learn. Not the asshole. Give him an ultimatum before you kick him out. Kids need to toughen up these days. Not the asshole. I see why you're frustrated. It's your apartment, and it's only fair that he should help out and not just take advantage. I've been through this with my own brother. We tried a few things, like setting daily goals and planning out the week, which helped. I was reading some blogs about productivity because of this. One thing I found was a site called Cloudburst.it that shows how your time adds up over the years visually using charts. Seeing the numbers was meaningful to him and he started taking time seriously, realizing he was wasting it on unnecessary things might be worth a look. Not the asshole, because this seems to be an epidemic. Young men drop out of college attaching themselves like limpets to couches in front of their PS5, which they can somehow afford, freeloading off relatives. They don't seem to get tired of it quickly. Change the Wi-Fi password. He'll move on. If you want to be nice, give him 30 days to find at least a part-time job before you will change the password. After which he will pay at least $500 per month in rent on time as defined in writing, along with a commitment that your home isn't his personal pigsty. He will also take any psychological meds he is supposed to or return to treatment for same as necessary. Otherwise he will be 25 and still figuring it out. Not the asshole. Though he could still be figuring things out, but he could have at least helped you with the household chores, because being a good employee starts with having a strong sense of responsibility. If he can't even do simple tasks at home, how much more in the real world? Info, Esh. Your brother is mooching and treating you like his mama. But what you said is completely pointless. It's a whine, not a boundary. He has no reason to get off his bum if all you do is shout, and there is no consequence to his laziness and disrespect of your living space. Does he pay rent? Are you expecting him to work? Was it a condition of him moving in? You need clear rules. No job within 30 days, he's out. Leaving trash and dishes again, he's out. You'll be the villain, yes. You need to be okay with that. Am I the asshole for dropping off my friend's dog at a doggy daycare when I was supposed to be watching him? My friend, 25F, asked me, 24F, if I could watch her dog, Cody, for 2 weeks while she went back to her home state to deal with some family issues. She told me he was potty trained, good with people, and good with other animals. I have a cat, Tawny. I had been to her house a few times, and, at least during the times I've been there, he's usually a sweetheart. I said yes, and when it came time for her to leave, she dropped Cody and his things off. First thing I realized is that Cody wasn't as house trained as she claimed. Maybe he knew it was wrong to pee in his house, but he clearly thought it would be perfectly okay to do it in mine. It happened on the first day, and when I told her, she said she had let him outside rather than walking him like she usually would. So maybe he had just sat outside and did nothing rather than do his business. It had been on the vinyl wood floor and I caught it immediately, so I just let it slide, cleaned it up, and took him for a walk right after. But as the days went by and it happened more than once, it became clear to me that he just wasn't that well potty trained at all. Second thing I realized is that, yes, he's friendly with other animals, but that doesn't mean good with other animals. Tawny had no problem with him when he was calm, but when he was hyperactive and getting all up in her space, she would get hissy and swipe at him. I ended up banishing him from the upstairs. But that led to another problem. Cody hated to be alone at night. He absolutely hated it, and made sure everyone knew about it by whining and barking until he would tire himself out. I finally ended up calling my friend and telling her that her dog isn't as well behaved as she claimed, and that she needed to tell me another friend of hers she felt comfortable enough to hand him off to, or that I was just going to end up sticking him in a doggy daycare that she'd either have to pay for or pay me back for. She got upset and asked why I had agreed to dog sit if I was just going to dump him, but I agreed to dog sit a dog who was painted as not having behavioral issues. She couldn't find someone she could trust to take care of Cody, so I found a non-expensive but still decently reviewed doggy daycare to drop him off at. She said she'd pay me back since I ended up paying up front, but that she was really cross with me and wasn't sure if she could depend on me for things anymore. I felt totally justified originally, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized I could totally understand why she'd be upset that I essentially went back on my word and also made her pay for a service she hadn't planned on using. I hadn't asked her to pay me to watch her dog. Am I the asshole? Extra info based on things I'm seeing commonly asked about and brought up. 1. I know how to care for a dog. Before I moved out of my parents' house, I was the main caretaker for the family dog, Prince. One of the reasons I was convinced she hadn't trained Cody as well as she claimed was because Prince never had accidents no matter where he was once I had him potty trained. He understood that if he's inside, he shouldn't do it. 2. The daycare wasn't something I just chose on my own haphazardly. I looked through the places near me and she agreed on one for me to take him to according to reviews and pricing. 3. I followed the instructions of Cody's care given to me. 4 walks a day with 4-hour intervals starting at 8 with the last call to the backyard before bed. As for attention, I like to think I gave him plenty. I played with him indoors and outdoors and he'd sit with me on the couch during downtime. He didn't really beg for attention during the daytime, and he didn't beg for attention during night until he got perma-banned. 4. I wouldn't say Tawny is socialized with dogs per se, but Cody isn't the first dog she's been around. She's been around Prince, but we had him trained not to rush at people or jump at people, and that translated to other animals as well by default, so she never had a problem with him. When my friend had told me, good with people and other animals, I had assumed that meant he probably had similar training. Honestly, based on the mixed answers so far, I'll probably end up just splitting the costs with her. It seems both of us didn't think this through during her rush to leave. I had a standard for what I considered a trained dog to be based off of Prince without considering that not every dog is going to be like Prince, and she didn't think about how Cody might be in a new environment he's never been before and assumed he'd behave as well as he did at home. A lot of assumptions have been made on our ends that made sense in a vacuum, but not when put into practice. You are the asshole. Your entire list of bad behaviors, are normal for a dog in a new environment and a cat who is not socialized. Of course he peed in a new environment and played like a normal dog. Of course he whined when left alone in a new place. It sounds like you were not prepared for typical dog behavior and then decided to use a service. She should not pay you back. She has not authorized your use of a decently reviewed service. You dumped her dog there. Not the asshole. Lol. All the you are the assholes, as if it wasn't a favor and the dog was not as trained as the owner led Op to believe. I would have done the same. Friend should have disclosed all this info and let Op decide if that's something she would or could take on. Reddit has always been so biased towards dogs, but it is ridiculous to expect Op to adjust everything for a dog that pisses and whines and stresses out her cat for 2 whole weeks. Anyway, just don't dog sit for anyone. Am I going crazy? It's not normal for a dog to keep peeing indoors after several days if it's healthy, potty trained, and doesn't have some sort of serious anxiety, right? And if it's a very anxious dog, Op should have been prepared by the friend, as high anxiety dogs require a lot of special attention. It doesn't sound like that was the case. Everyone sucks here this. She got upset and asked why I had agreed to dog sit if I was just going to dump him, but I agreed to dog sit a dog who was painted as not having behavioral issues. You wouldn't have dumped him doggy daycare if he didn't have the problems he did at your place. Normally when you have an animal that needs to stay in a new environment for an extended time, you take the time to introduce them into the home with the other people to see how they actually do with the owner there. You two didn't do that. I am surprised that the daycare allowed you to drop him off with an introductory period beforehand. Most won't let you do that. Not the asshole. I think you handled everything well under the circumstances. I also think it's wild for people in the comments to claim that it's a reasonable expectation that a house-trained dog pees inside when away from home. If someone had my house-trained dog for 2 weeks and that kept happening, I would have asked them to have her checked by a vet, cause that's not normal. Could be that your friend hasn't socialized the dog enough for this kind of situation and it's unreasonable to expect you to hold your end of the deal when what you were told doesn't check out. Not the asshole dog piss nasty. And prioritize your cat. It just didn't work out. Dog daycare took great care of him just as you would have, and they don't care if the dog pees on their floor. Am I the asshole for not changing my wedding date to accommodate my brother's religious ceremony? I, 29F, have been planning my wedding for over a year. My fiancé, 31M, and I chose our date in April because it's when we met, and it's meaningful to us. We've sent out save the dates, booked vendors, and even some guests have booked flights. Everything was set until my brother, 26M, announced his conversion to a new religion. We were supportive of his decision, but his ceremony, which marks a major spiritual milestone, was scheduled for the same weekend as my wedding. He asked if I could change my wedding date because, in his faith, these ceremonies are rare and only held on certain days. Moving the wedding would be extremely difficult and costly, our vendors are mostly non-refundable, and guests have already started making travel plans. I explained this to my brother, but he got upset, accusing me of being selfish and prioritizing my party over his spiritual journey. My parents took his side, saying that I should be more flexible and that his ceremony is more important than a wedding, which could happen any weekend. They've even hinted that they might not attend my wedding if I don't accommodate him. To be clear, I love my brother and I understand the importance of his ceremony, but we've been planning this for a year, and moving the date would be a financial disaster for us. We've already invested thousands into this day. My fiancé and I even offered to host a celebration dinner for my brother's conversion, but he rejected the idea, saying it wasn't the same and that I'm not taking his faith seriously. Now, my brother says he might not attend the wedding, and our parents are supporting him, framing me as the selfish one. Some extended family members are even siding with him, saying they'd rather attend his ceremony because it's more meaningful than my wedding. I feel like I'm being forced to choose between honoring my wedding plans and respecting my brother's new faith, which wasn't even a factor when we set the date. This has caused a huge rift in the family. My fiancé is on my side, but I'm starting to question whether I'm being too rigid. I want my brother at my wedding, but changing the date would be incredibly costly and stressful. Am I the one being unreasonable here for sticking to my original plans? Am I the asshole? Not the asshole. This has caused a huge rift in the family. My fiancé is on my side, but I'm starting to question whether I'm being too rigid. I want my brother at my wedding, but changing the date would be incredibly costly and stressful. Am I the one being unreasonable here for sticking to my original plans? You have had this date picked for over a year. If your family chooses your brother over you, then you know where you stand with your family. Has your brother always been seen as the golden child? And that his ceremony is more important than a wedding, which could happen any weekend. The only way Op should move the wedding is if brother and parents pay for all of the costs of moving the wedding, including the travel plans of guests. But I don't think Op will win this one. The brother is obviously the golden child. However, the wedding will go more smoothly if brother and parents aren't there. Not the asshole. Your wedding can no longer happen on any weekend because it's been booked. Why can't your brother have his ceremony on another date? I doubt there's only one day per year. To dismiss your wedding as merely a party should tell you everything you need to know about how your brother really feels about you. You should also make it clear to your parents that if they choose not to go to your wedding, it will irrevocably affect their relationship with you and any future children you might have. Enjoy your wedding on the day you planned it. Not the asshole. Not the asshole. You wrote something like they are held on certain days? So plural? Why can't he pick another day? Your date was first. In my eyes, he is the selfish one. Not the asshole. Please ask all of your critics, including mom, dad and bro, if they are willing to fork over all of the money that changing your date would require. That would also include covering the flight costs of anyone who has booked a flight. If they know you can say you made an honest effort for your brother, but what he is asking is beyond selfish and it's ultimately his choice. The people who are basically saying that your wedding is meaningless have shown their true colors and you are better off without them.